Imagine living in a world where the innocent are left for dead and death is used as a deterrent. What we do. Today I will be discussing the death penalty and why it should be abolished. First and foremost is the issue of wrongful sentencing. Since 1973, it is quoted that at least 200 people who were wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death in the U.S. have since been exonerated, which means their cases were further examined and they were proven innocent. The time it takes to exonerate someone is very lengthy, and it's more lengthy than it was in the past, sometimes taking decades. These are at least 200 innocent people spending decades in prison and sometimes still not avoiding the death penalty because they were not exonerated in time. Life without parole wouldn't solve the issue of innocent people facing unfair punishment. However, it would solve the issue of them being killed, and they would be able to defend themselves in the end if they were proven exonerated. It's a much more just way of punishment, and it gives innocent individuals a chance to clear their names. Another issue regarding the death penalty is racial bias. The Death Penalty Information Center quotes that a bias towards white victim cases has been found in almost all of the sophisticated studies exploring this area over many years. These studies typically control for other variables in the cases studied, such as the number of victims and the brutality of the crime, and still found that the defendants were more likely to be sentenced to death if they killed a white person. My visual aid here is a pie chart showing the race of victims of executed prisoners, and it shows that 75% of the victims of prisoners sentenced to the death penalty are white. However, another source regarding the issue of this topic says that nationally, only 40% of murder victims generally are white. This shows a massive skew in who we sentence to the death penalty as a nation, and racial profiling so deeply into our system and our legal expectations of individuals, which is disgusting. The death penalty in many ways has been weaponized against minority groups, historically used to control and oppress marginalized groups. Another issue with the death penalty is the question of deterrence. Is the death penalty actually a deterrent? The essence of the theory is that the threat of being executed in the future will be sufficient to cause a significant number of people to refrain from committing a heinous crime they had otherwise planned. However, it has not been proven that the death penalty is more of a deterrent than life without parole. Other punishments, such as life without parole, might provide equal deterrence at far less cost and without the attendant risk of executing an innocent person. Lastly, there's the issue of cost of the death penalty. Many people assume that it's cheaper to sentence the death penalty than it is to sentence life without parole, because the executed person no longer requires confinement, health care, and related expenses. But in the modern application of capital punishment, that assumption has been repeatedly proven wrong. The process of sentencing someone to death in the first place is extremely expensive. The trials are long with multiple appeals, and legal procedures are more complex than for someone sentenced to life without parole. At a time when a country is facing rising inflation and staggering national debt, it's hard to justify spending that much money on a system that often fails to deliver justice, especially when there's the option of sentencing someone to life without parole and avoiding so many issues that come with the death penalty. In conclusion, the death penalty doesn't make us safer, and it certainly doesn't make us more moral. Instead, life without parole offers a much more just solution. Life without parole avoids the cost of the death penalty, and it is still a deterrent. And it not avoids racial bias, but it doesn't allow for innocent individuals to be sentenced to death due to their race. And life without parole also allows for wrongful sentencing to be overturned with time. Executing people doesn't make us safer, it just drains society of their humanity. This is why the death penalty should be looked at on a national level, and it should be very, very deeply looked at by society, because it is not something that should be taken lightly, and it's not something that should be okay with society.